Hi, everybody. I am Joanna Saroihos. I am one of the organizers for today's event. Welcome to the Microsoft 365 Copilot Realizing Business Value webinar. Our session will run for an hour, and our wonderful speakers, Amrita and Michelle, are already on standby and ready to give us a very valuable session this afternoon. So if you have questions along the way, please feel free to drop them on the Q&A box at any time, because we also have moderators on standby to answer them. So we hope that you enjoy this afternoon's webinar, and without further ado, I give the floor to our first speaker. Take it away, Amrita.
Thanks, Joanna. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our customer skilling series for Microsoft 365 Copilot, Realizing Business Value. We will be running this session across 5 different languages. So please keep an eye out for those 5 different languages across Asia. And this is the first of many sessions within the skilling series. So later this month and early next month, we will be running a session on extensibility, so do keep a lookout for that as well. But today's session is all about realizing business value, and it will be led by myself and my partner in crime, Michelle Arthurs, who you will see very soon. And we are both modern work usage architects based in Australia. And our focus for this year is all around helping our customers realize business value with Microsoft 365 Copilot. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get into the content for today. This session will be available on demand for you and your colleagues to view after today, alongside all of the material will also be shared with you after today. Please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A chat as we go through the presentation. We do have a few members from our team who will help us answer any of the questions throughout the presentation. And if we don't get to your questions, we promise that we'll get a hold of all of the questions after the session and get to your questions after. Now, if we rewind the clocks back to last year, when Microsoft 365 Copilot became generally available, a lot of the conversations that we were having with customers was all around security, reliability, and governance of Copilot. We then moved into setting up Copilot pilot groups and then rolling out to just a subset of users to trial out the technology. And the focus was on the change of behavior and adoption of the product. However, fast forward to today, nearly every single conversation we are having with customers is beyond the early use of the technology. How do we realize value out of the technology today? So in today's session, we want to share a standardized value framework that we have worked with alongside a subset of customers, which aims to guide your organization to answer this very question. But before we get into the value framework, it's important to take a step back and understand that AI transformation will shift the ways of working. And the idea is that the shift will allow individuals to focus on more complex, high judgment tasks and take away some of the more mundane, low judgment tasks that most information workers are faced with daily. And we're already seeing real life examples of this, whereby Copilot is transforming the way we work, whether it be relying on Copilot to take care of your meeting notes, summarizing lengthy documents, helping you find information that you need within seconds. And personally, I've actually seen that shift inside not only Microsoft, but even within our customers as well. So every meeting now, instead of the usual you're on mute, is now starting with, can we please transcribe the session? You know, just so that we can make sure that we've captured the AI notes. And especially if you're having external meetings, you know, I'm now seeing customers ask me to share the AI notes after, especially if I'm transcribing the session. But it's also important to understand that Copilot is also evolving. And although our vision for Copilot started off with personal productivity, we're now expanding to take on team collaboration and process automation across the organization. So within the personal productivity space, Copilot will become more personalized, more proactive, more powerful, and it'll be able to execute on tasks and drive outcomes as your personal assistant. So for example, we will be launching a new feature that's also available on our roadmap, whereby based on your prompt, Copilot will be able to provide prompt suggestions based on that same methodology around goal, context, source, and expectations to really get the best outcome out of your prompting. If we move over to the team Copilot space, we're looking at Copilot beyond just a personal assistant to really support a team or a department and improving that collaboration. And then on the right-hand side, you can see it's all about agents. So this is custom Copilots that enable customers to orchestrate and automate business processes. You may have seen in our Wave 2 announcements that we've introduced Copilot agents in BizChat. So BizChat is the experience within Microsoft Teams, your Copilot experience within Teams. It's now called BizChat. Becoming generally available to customers this month. And we've actually seen Copilot agents being rolled out to customers as we speak. And this feature now allows you to connect to your organization's SharePoint knowledge sources and be able to build your own agents. So what this means from an overall evolution point of view is that we're moving away from just task-driven assistance to more of a proactive ally. So it's much more personal and much more outcome orientated. But if we look beyond Microsoft 365 Copilot, we have a range of AI solutions, which is essential to really understand, especially when we start going deeper into your organization's business processes and high value scenarios. So if we start off with the out-of-box low-code solutions, we have Microsoft 365 Copilot, but we also have role-based Copilots. So these are sales, service, and finance Copilots. We then also have Copilot agents, which help connect to your internal data sources and sort of enhance the knowledge and actions. And then moving on to solutions which require a little bit more effort to build and maintain, such as Copilot Studio, which is designed for your IT developers to build those tailored Copilot and Copilot agents as well. And then for your AI engineers and your pro developers, we have Azure AI Studio. And so those are for more customized scenarios. So you can see here on the slide, we have the full spectrum of products based on your internal requirements. So when we start to talk about business value, fundamentally, AI transformation is not just about technology. It's about the organization's ability and desire to increase revenue, to drive down costs, and most importantly, to increase employee well-being. And these three pillars have really come from based on the conversations that we've had with multiple customers, looking at their internal KPIs. We've noticed that they continue to align back to these three pillars. And you'll actually notice throughout the presentation today that we reference back to these pillars, whether it be within the Copilot transformation assessment, which I'll be taking you through, or even in the business value definition stage, which Michelle will be taking you through. We group value into these three buckets. But to attain value in those three pillars, there is a maturity journey that customers typically go on. And if we start off in the pre-value realization phase, which is just the bottom of the value journey, this is when customers are at the beginning of their journey. They're planning and preparing for a contained rollout, around 30 to 40 users, ensuring that they get all the security, privacy, and governance approvals. We then typically see customers move into the personal productivity stage. And this is actually where most of my customers are sitting, and they've deployed looking between 300 to 2,000 licenses across multiple departments. They're seeing good adoption of Copilot. They're measuring value using tools such as the Copilot dashboard, which I would highly recommend. With the Copilot dashboard, you can actually go into departmental and see how a department is using Copilot. You can see particular personas in your organization, how they're using Copilot. There's also assisted value or assisted hours. So how has Copilot assisted your organization and saved you a particular amount of hours? So I would highly recommend, if you haven't done so, to deploy the Copilot dashboard. And that's your quantitative means. We're then also seeing customers look at qualitative means through internal surveys, and even using some of the usage stats within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, which really gives them a good overall measurement on time savings and on consumption. And as we move up the value chain into business process, organizations will need to extend usage to either role-based processes or even department-based processes. And that's why the slide we covered earlier, which shows the spectrum of the Gen AI solutions available to you today, becomes really crucial. Because typically, customers will start looking into role-based copilots or copilot agents to streamline those department processes. So if I can just give you an example, I had a customer looking into their HR department, and they decided to focus on 3 functional use cases, one of them being to streamline their onboarding process. And we were actually able to achieve that just using out-of-the-box Microsoft 365 Copilot experience today. So if we look at the process of writing job descriptions using Copilot for Word, comparing job descriptions to resumes that were coming from candidates, we use BizChat or the Copilot experience within Teams, being able to transcribe the interviews and then being able to do a comparison without any bias, able to use Teams, Copilot in Teams, and then obviously the onboarding process as well, we were able to use Copilot in PowerPoint. So that's all of the out-of-the-box Copilot experience that you can leverage today. But another use case that we're looking at was to create an improved interface for employees to learn about their benefits and policies and procedures, and essentially to reduce traffic to their HR team. So in this case, they were looking at Copilot agents to achieve this. So wanting to tap into some of their SharePoint environment and repositories to be able to create a space whereby employees could self-serve. So you'll notice that organizations or looking at sort of the entire process, organizations are having to sort of look at their use cases and then decide which generative AI solution will actually be the most useful for me in that particular scenario. But you will notice that organizations seeing the most value, whereby you can measure revenue gains, cost management, is where Copilot is rolled out to an entire organization with focus on line of business, such as an IT help desk or a HR help desk. Another example that I'll give you is for one of our customers in Asia that have deployed around 20,000 licenses across their entire organization. And they are focusing in on 4 key line of business use cases to measure value. Now, I really wanted to share these 4 key use cases just to give you an idea of the nuances and how much work has gone into actually understanding what are the different 4 key areas they want to focus on and what those use cases look like. So number 1 is procurement. So they're actually using Copilot to evaluate RFPs, deviations, identifying risks, and drafting new contracts. The second use case is within the finance department. So this is around AI-powered chatbots and answering questions about standard guidelines and procedures, very similar to the use case I shared previously around HR. The third use case is around HR. So being able to use Copilot to help identify skill gaps in relevant domains and generating job descriptions. And then the fourth use case is around audit. So reviewing historical audit data and emerging risks for future audit planning. So that's just to give you an understanding, when you get to that org level, what are the different types of use cases customers are looking at today? So the idea is to really ask yourselves in your organization, where are we sitting on this value journey and where do we want to go? I also want to call out that no matter what stage of the journey you are on, there is value to be seen at every stage. And you can actually see this on the right-hand side, where we've got the percentages at each stage. But it's important to understand that it is a journey to get to organizational value, and that you have to work with your respective Microsoft teams, your internal change teams, IT teams, to help deploy licenses to entire departments or teams to capture those high value use cases and define internal KPIs that matter to your organization. So the next thought that must be coming into your mind is, okay, that's great. I've understood the value journey now, but how do we get to organization value? And so on the slide here, we have mapped out the value journey acceleration process to help anchor the methodology and what is needed to actually reach business value definition. So if we look at the journey, we start the journey with alignment between your internal teams and Microsoft to really map out the journey and the success measures along the way. And then we move into the Copilot transformation assessment, which helps define your current state. And really, it's a great way to level set internally and also with your Microsoft team, because one of the key outcomes from the transformation assessment is the personas that you want to target for the next phase. Once we have those personas, we then move into role-based scenario discovery sessions, which aim to capture those key use cases. And usually during this phase, based on customer requirements, we may have to branch out to various supporting workshops, such as the extensibility art of the possible, if certain use cases would fit better as a Copilot Studio scenario. Or alternatively, if a customer needs support to deploy the Copilot dashboard to be able to measure usage and consumption metrics by department, or again, looking at that value assisted hours metric, we would then branch out into that workshop. Once we have identified the high value scenarios, we then move into business value definition. And that's where we prioritize scenarios, linking them to your organization goals and making sure that we can actually define clear KPIs that, again, is meaningful to your organization. And then we move over to the plan and execution phase, working with the customer to define and execute the plan for those selected scenarios. And then usually we actually go back to either alignment or most of the time Copilot transformation assessment to either update, regroup, look at what was defined initially and what now the new current state will be, and focus on a new persona within the organization. So I want to take you through the first part of this value journey, which is the Copilot transformation assessment. Now, the Copilot transformation assessment is essentially a one-pager that aims to help capture your current state. And it's a really great way for you to have an internal alignment with your key business decision leaders. So we as Microsoft can help you determine the most impactful next steps to progress in defining business value. So if we start at the top, we have AI vision and strategy. So what is the vision for generative AI? And this is not just around Copilot, it's around generative AI in your organization, but also trying to understand some of your main business objectives as well that you're looking to achieve. As we go down, we then go into business value measurement. Now, these questions are really designed to be prompters, to help your key business decision makers to start thinking about What does business value mean to you? What does success with Copilot look like for you? Are there any particular KPIs or value metrics that you're already tracking that can be used to understand some of the impacts of Copilot? We talked about this earlier, priority groups. So which groups and teams are most critical to you to start achieving those business objectives and delivering on your KPIs? We then move into improvement. So what's your desired baseline measurement and how will you measure that improvement over time? And then what level do you want to measure value? What's the scope? Are we looking at a particular department, a function, a task, a process, a workflow? So again, all of these questions are designed to be prompters to get you to start thinking about what it is that is, of value to you. Because one of the key lessons learned for our team, especially once we started working with a lot of customers on the business value acceleration process, is that business value is different to every single customer. So the definition is different to every single customer. And again, going back to the previous slide that I talked about, we define value within these three pillars or these three buckets: helping employees thrive, manage costs, and increasing revenue. And again, you can see different prompters within these three pillars. So helping employees thrive, for a particular employee, it could be about retaining talent, or it could be about promoting employee well-being. If we move into manage costs, this could be about relocating time to higher value jobs or completing some of the same tasks more efficiently. And then the last pillar is around increasing revenue. So this could essentially mean an increase in pipeline or reducing time to market for new products. Underneath that, we have the value journey. So this is the slide that we just talked about. So understanding or questioning your organization on where you are at within the value journey. And then on the right-hand side, we have some of the current state metrics to start or get you to start looking at internally. So for example, key stakeholders, you may not have a particular stakeholder for a change lead, for example, or AI influencers or change champions within your organization. But this is a good way for you to connect internally to understand, are we actually missing someone from the core team that could be leading that piece of work? We then go ahead and capture the Copilot deployment, so your current state. This is your total users, your monthly active usage, which user groups have been deployed within your organization. What are the different projects in flight or that have been completed? So your current projects in the generative AI space, and what are your organization's top priorities in this space? And then the last box is all around extensibility. So have you had a conversation about extensibility? Do you know what extensibility means? What has been done previously in this space? And what are some of the ISVs that you are using today that could be a potential extensibility conversation that we have with you, whether it be ServiceNow, Jira, Confluence, Workday? What are the different applications that you use in your organization today? A question that we get asked, or I've been asked from customers during some of these Copilot transformation assessment sessions, is when it comes to priority groups, who do I assign licenses to? And different customers have leveraged this in different ways. So some customers look at their usage reports for Microsoft 365 apps. So they actually try and see who has the highest usage of your 365 apps, whether it be Teams, Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Some reach out to business leaders and ask them which teams in their department can we target. And some have actually got a request process whereby individuals can go into ServiceNow and request for a license themselves, and then it goes through an internal approval process through their manager. So there's different ways whereby customers are actually assigning licenses or selecting priority groups. The way that I've seen work really well is actually the reaching out to business leaders, because a lot of the time your business leaders do have a problem statement that they're wanting to look at for their department, for a particular function or a particular workflow, and they can actually help you and assist you to target their teams and departments that can really help you, especially when it comes to the personas and scenario discovery sessions. This is an example of a customer, and I just thought I'd quickly share this with you as well, just so you can get a flavour of the conversations that we're having with customers and what a filled out Copilot transformation assessment looks like. We have removed the customer's name, but this is an ANZ customer. And what I really want to call out here is that within the business value measurement space, again, it was a conversation that we had with the customer. There was a lot of back and forth to really define what that vision was going to be, what the business value measurement was going to be, and what's the most impactful KPI or what matters to them most. And so if you see within the 3 pillars for helping employees thrive, the key value measurement for this customer is being able to let employees be more productive and reduce time on repetitive tasks. So they're actually using both quantitative and qualitative means to capture that through their internal surveys, but also through the Copilot dashboard. And then if we move over to managing costs, so reducing time to complete prospective customer research, again, we're leveraging their internal KPIs and using that as a benchmark. And then the third one is around increasing revenue. So for this customer in particular, when we talk about increasing revenue, for them, what actually matters is their strategic goal of an NPS score. And in this case, the NPS score is 30+. So commercial bankers are time poor, they're looking to manage existing customers, prospecting for new ones. And in this case, they've identified 3 key use cases to help reduce the admin and increase time in front of customers. So I really wanted to position this with all of you on the call today, because that's why we say the business value framework is so key to position early in the journey. And it's important to help you think about what matters most for your organization. I now want to hand it over to Michelle, who is going to take you through the role-based scenario discovery and the business value definition stage. So I'll just hand it over to Michelle to take you through that now.
Thanks, Amrita. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the call today. I will be taking you through the role-based scenarios discovery phase and the business value definition phase in the next 30 minutes. If you have any questions, once again, feel free to put it into the chat, and we've got the moderator that will help respond to your questions. Now, let's jump straight into it. In the role-based scenario discovery phase, what we're trying to do is select a group of champions, power users, or potentially a representative from different roles, from different departments, so that we can get an understanding of the business processes that these roles are doing on a day-to-day basis, and figuring out the challenges that they are facing and how we can use Copilot to help enhance those processes. The duration of these workshops is approximately between 4 to 6 hours, but that's really is there as a guideline. You have the flexibility to break it down to smaller chunks, smaller meetings across the week. You can have multiple sessions with multiple groups if you wanted to. It is entirely up to you, and we're just going to walk you through some of the activities that you would want to run in these scenarios. Workshops. And ultimately, the objective here is for us to identify
scenarios that can lead to significant business value gain and really show the ROI that Copilot is giving back to your organization or to your business. And at the end of this workshop, we ideally want to end with a list that will capture all of the business processes, the scenarios and KPIs that contribute towards the broader business value that Copilot have impacted across your organization. So I guess, where do we start? You can start, like I said earlier, to select a group of key champions, your power users. Some customers like to select representatives from various departments to join the workshop so that we can get a broader view in terms of different business processes and what's involved and the challenges they are facing across the organization. Some customers actually want to keep it between themselves, so they kind of have a deep dive session for just a particular business unit. So as an example, if HR really want to get involved and just have a session amongst themselves, at the end of the scenario discovery workshop, they might end up with a list full of HR processes that can be transformational, and it's just another way of Copilot transforming a department. So there's a few ways you can pick and choose the audience that you want to carry out these workshops with. But my tips would be, make sure they are across multiple departments so that you can capture different personas as well as different types of scenarios, and so to cover all of your bases. Once you've selected your audience, the next thing you want to do is dive deep into the process. What are people doing today across their businesses? What are the processes and tasks that they need to do? And then understanding the challenges that they are facing across each of those scenarios. Don't forget to get them thinking about, like, how long does it take to do these things today? What are some of the benchmarks that we can use to measure ourselves if we were to implement and provide a solution to those challenges? We want to look at some of the success matrices as well for each of these scenarios, because of course, how do we know we're going to be successful without those key KPIs? And then at the end of all of this, we want to consolidate all of the scenarios and then prioritizing them. So for the next 2 to 3 months, what we will be prioritizing compared to what we need to look at implementing in the next 6 to 12 months. That's the purpose of this discovery phase. Now, before starting the workshop, what I want to highlight is, very often when we walk into these scenarios discovery workshop, we have a fixed mindset in terms of what solution we are going to provide to our user. So I'm going to challenge you and encourage you to help your end users think beyond the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. Yes, right now, out of the box, Copilot can only know so much and do so much across the Microsoft 365 apps, but let them think about their business processes, because that will also mean they need to get data sitting from a third-party platform, from a business customized platform. We don't want to limit the user's scenarios or business processes or challenges based on what they think Copilot can solve, because we can always extend Copilot capabilities with the help of things like Copilot agents. So the idea here is to help them think as broad as possible, think about all of their common tasks and processes today that they have to do on a daily basis, and then figuring out what are the challenges before boxing into the solution straight away. So here's one of the activity, or the first activity that we can do with our targeted users. Whether you're running it remotely, you might, if you are running it remotely, I would recommend using a collaboration platform such as Whiteboard or technologies of similar nature, or you can use an Excel sheet if you want to go old school. Ultimately, what we're trying to do here is get as many users to think as many scenarios as possible. What department do they belong to? What roles are they in? What sort of task are they doing today? How are they doing it today? What apps are they using? What are the challenges they're facing, and how they want to improve those business processes or tasks, and then the time that it's taken them to accomplish the goal that they set out to do. This is the information that we want to get from our users. So you can collect that digitally, or if you're facilitating the session on site, then I highly encourage you to group them into smaller groups, and then using equipment like sticky notes, put it onto a whiteboard, or you can even print out this particular template here and get your users to fill in these different sessions. So in this case, what we have here on the screen is an example of a project manager who is trying to send out project update status to the key stakeholders across the business. Now you can see that they're using both Jira Cloud to manage the project, but the communication is done in Outlook. So we're stepping through how things are being done today, and then the challenging they face is that having to reconcile the project task and comments across Jira Cloud, and then having to copy and paste that and almost having to reword it into Outlook before sending the project status updates. Now today, every time they have to do that, it takes them about 30 minutes. That's our benchmark. If we're going to look at this scenario and trying to enhance it with Copilot, our goal is to beat that 30 minutes mark. We want to shorten that time. So that's why it's so important for us to capture how they're doing it today, the challenges they're facing, and the benchmark for us to measure up against. So after the first task, and I would highly encourage you to get the participants to think of as many processes and challenges they're facing as possible. The more, the merrier. You want to have a whiteboard full of these scenarios that you can then pick and choose from later on down the line, which is in this next section. This is when we're going to start thinking about the solution. How are we going to transform these business processes to enhance the way people work, to shorten their time, to increase certain KPIs to make them seem more successful? So in this case, we have picked out that particular scenario that we did previously in the other activity. We could go, well, as someone who is a project manager, I want to be able to reconcile pending tasks from Jira to on a daily or weekly basis, and be able to share those updates with my key business stakeholders. My projects are mostly, and the tasks are mostly in Jira, but my communication is in Outlook. And I want to be able to use Copilot for Microsoft 365 to help me enhance this experience. And so how would I go about doing that? After pretending like you've had a lot of discussions as a group on how you could tackle this particular challenge, you might come up with a solution. And it could be using Copilot, the project manager, or I am, able to generate status update emails using update information about status of task for the project within Jira. So we're now in the solutioning mode. We're providing a technology, we're providing a way to enhance how this user have typically approached this task previously. And this is actually a great second activity to start isolating scenarios that have been discovered that is solvable by Copilot for M365, and then scenarios that might need a different set of technologies or a different solution to help address those. Because the purpose of this session is for us to figure out how we can solve or transform business processes with M365 Copilot, we only want to start concentrating and focusing on scenarios that is solvable by the technologies. And so at the end, we want to capture all of it in one space, and ideally an Excel sheet or a SharePoint list, because some customers don't want people to play around with Excel and mess everything up. So you can choose to document and consolidate all of the scenario that has been discovered through those last two activities in a space where anyone can access and see and learn. So in this example, you have an Excel sheet that consolidate all of the scenarios that we've discovered across various departments. So in this case, human resources and IT. I could see the scenarios that we're trying to solve, the value that is going to get me if I was going through the transformation process, the different use cases, what sort of technology am I required to solve that, but also how many users is it affecting if we were to go and implement such solution, and which personas will this affect? Who can find these scenarios useful? And what are the contribution to our overall KPIs, our overall business value? You have this one single place to store all of that details that will help you, one, act as the place to help scale the adoption. You can pass this spreadsheet, maybe less details, onto your end users who are new to Copilot. Let's say I'm in HR, I'm super new to Copilot. I'm eager to use it. I want to know how it can help me. I have this single place to go and see what are some of the scenarios that I can leverage Copilot for, and the time savings that could actually help me if I were to carry out that task in a particular way and leveraging the technology. Secondly, it could help us start prioritizing our scenarios. Some scenarios are easy to implement, like let's say summarizing a meeting. That's easy enough, raising awareness and then help train your user and show them a few prompts. Some scenarios might take a bit longer, and you might need to build a Copilot agent, a bot, different apps to integrate with Copilot to be able to achieve that particular goal. So based on that, we want to have some sort of matrices to help us with the prioritization process. And so if you can see on the right-hand side here, we've got the scores from 1 to 5, the scale, and we can work with our end users to rate 3 different aspects of those scenarios that we want to tackle. One is its relevancy. Is it relevant to many people, or is it just a niche small group? Is it measurable? Can we really see the value? Can we measure that value and show the ROI Copilot is having on the business? Because we don't want to be picking out a scenario to implement and unable to measure the success of that particular implementation. And then is it deliverable? Like we want to be picking out scenarios that we can tackle within the next few months, and then, line up the ones that takes a bit longer. We want to get the quick wins and then move on to the harder one that needs a bit of time to build out, to develop, to pass the governance and so on. So this matrix here helps us understand our priorities, because by the end of these workshops, you should have a list, an abundance, list of scenarios that you can leverage and prioritize. So to help you get started, because we hear from our customers that it is very difficult sometimes trying to speak the lingo, trying to understand a specific department and get our end users start thinking about their daily processes and how they could potentially use Copilot to transform the processes. We have provided this Microsoft Copilot scenario library for you to use. So the team will probably paste in this link for you to access. So please bookmark it if you haven't already. But from this page, you can look at the functional areas. So your departments, you can filter down and double click on departments that you're about to run the workshops with. So help you get started on some of these commonly used use cases or common KPIs across each of these departments. So let's double click onto human resources. Let's look at this particular site here. We have an abundance of information that is super relevant to HR. You've got the human resources scenario kit that you can download. You can watch some demos to get you started as well. If you want to do a bit of a demo before your workshop, you're more than welcome to do that. And then we have the KPIs that are super relevant to that particular department. So instead of having to approach, which is what we're doing with the workshop, is think about scenarios and then drill down to the KPIs. You can flip this around and think about the KPIs that your business have set and how these KPIs are relevant to the department today. And you can look at the KPIs that HR typically cares about and work backwards on the scenarios that could help contribute towards that KPI. So if you're, let's say, interested in reducing the time that for employee to onboard, because that will provide more business value, the faster an employee is onboarded and is up to speed, they can do their job faster. So that, if that was your KPIs, well, actually, let's look at the different roles that would typically have this sort of KPIs, and what are some of the scenarios that we could look at that will change the way people work and contributes towards that particular KPI of employee onboarding time. And the solution that they can use to transform that business process is also on the slide right there. So hopefully you were able to have time to go on here and have a look at some of this materials. Beyond from KPI, we even have some of the common processes that we see that typically get raised as challenges across the department. You can see how AI is transforming those processes by looking at the before AI and then what happened when you're using AI. So those are there for you to leverage, and we also have collaterals that you can use to drive adoptions and used in the scenario discovery workshop as well. Those are day in a life of a particular personas. You can also use these to customize your outcomes or your findings later to help drive further adoption also as well. So I wanted to pull your attention to those. Last but not least, if you don't want to, if you're already going to the library prior to the workshop, and then during the workshop, you just wanted to show the users a few slides to get them thinking about their business processes, you can show them this particular one too. So this template give the user a bit of an understanding on what are some of the common processes do I do in my day-to-day, just jot their brains a little to get them started. And we also have a slide that has KPIs tied to those key processes as well. So you can use those to help get the conversation started. So I guess just to recap of what we need to do in this particular phase of business scenario this discovery, you need to look at a targeted group of audience of users. Think about the processes that they're going through and the challenges they are experiencing, how they're doing it today, and how we can change and transform that using or with the help of Copilot or Microsoft 365 Copilot, and then what value will we get by transforming that business process. And that is ultimately the activities and the outcome that we're trying to get out of this space. So once we're done with the role-based scenario discovery stage, we're going to move on to the business value definition, the very last few stages of this journey. Now, unlike the previous workshop where it needs a lot of people and it doesn't need a lot of time, this one is really for you to present your findings, right? The duration that we recommend is about 60 minutes because it's all about you presenting back the findings that you've discovered during the scenario discovery workshops. Your key audience are your key stakeholders, your sponsors, BDMs, head of departments, the ones that you're trying to show the ROI of Copilot, the ones that you're trying to seek commitment and alignment and support for you to be able to implement Copilot further. So that is, ultimately our objective for this section here. We're going to anchor our presentation or our session in this phase across 4 different slides, and I will show you and walk you through a bit deeper in each of these. So the first one is scenario prioritization. We did a lot of work in the Excel sheet that you saw earlier when we apply some weightings or scales across both, the deliverable, the relevancy, and the last one is, I think it was the measurable or not. So based on those, you can actually map those scenarios onto this matrix, which is all around business value versus effort of implementations. So based on that, you map it up here, and it's just a great way to show your leadership team a visual of where the different scenarios that you've discovered and where they lay. This helps them make the decisions of where to focus as a business in the next few months. And typically, we would want to be looking at high priorities scenarios that is sitting at the high value, but doesn't take a lot of time to implement. Then that should be our quick wins. Those should be the scenario that we need to target in the next month or two. Then when you move on to the next 3, 4, 5 months, you might look at the medium priorities. So some things like lead generation might take a bit longer to build an extensibility, to train Copilot, to know what you want, to set the right business processes in place and train people. But the value is going to be huge because it might lead to revenue, increase in revenue. So those are just some examples that you can use. This is a great visualization of where as a business you should be focusing your time on. But of course, we don't have the space to add everything all in one place. So we're going to also walk them through the scenarios that we have also captured and show them the timeline. But first, we want to dive a little bit deeper into each of the scenarios that we presented in that matrices there. And so you can actually walk them through a bit more detailed on why those scenarios that we want to focus on in the next 4 months is worth focusing on. You can show them a bit on like the scenarios that we're trying to tackle, how many people this is going to influence across the business, and who buy-ins, sponsors do we need, and what is the ROI? What is the potential business impact is it having if we were to carry out this transformation? This very last column, or last 2 columns, is super important in this conversation, and we need to get the message across well to get the buy-in, explaining to them why these are quick wins and how we can track those quick wins as well. And then we'll follow with a more, less detailed, high-level timeline on how we're planning to approach the next 12 months as the business. And we'll start adding all of the scenarios that we have discovered. Some are quick wins, some might take a bit longer, and you can even section it out to the different departments so that you can start handing it off to different stakeholders and owners across each of these departments. Because we want to capture everything. We want to present all of this goodness to our leadership team so that we can start planning forward as well. So before wrapping up, we have one more slide. The reason I'm bringing this back, where Amrita walked you earlier in the session around the slide, is to remind you and the executive of what success looked like for you at the very start of this journey. It's a quick reminder of what you set out to achieve with M365 Copilot and the transformation that you're looking to get from the platform itself. So by picking out things like help employees thrive, manage costs, and increasing revenue, those are your key business value that we've discussed and agreed upon at the very, very start. So now we're going to look at how do we link those back to the use cases, to the scenarios and KPIs that we have discovered throughout this journey. So if I line those up again and put through, what you're seeing here is a direct link. What are the use cases and scenarios that we've discovered throughout our scenario discovery session, what we've captured, and the KPI that it will impact if we did transform the way we work and the business processes using Copilot, and how those KPIs will be contributing towards the business value. This is a great slide to visually link all of your work, all of your hard work in the past few stages to the very ROI that your leadership team is looking for. It could serve the purpose of trying to seek for commitment to implement these transformation projects, or it could serve as a business case to show your leadership team that, hey, these are the ROI that we're getting from training and getting our users leveraging Copilot and transforming our business processes. So with that, I'm going to pass on to Amrita to share with you some of the resources that you can leverage to run this journey and to run these different workshops and close out the session. Over to you, Amrita.
Thanks, Michelle. So I just want to quickly wrap up the session. I know we've got 3 minutes left by revisiting the value journey acceleration process. And on this slide, what you'll see is all of the different pillars that we've talked towards, whether it be the Copilot transformation assessment, role-based scenario discovery, business value definition, and we've just mapped out who is typically involved in those conversations, what's the time commitment that we're looking at, and what are those sample outcomes. I think that's probably one of the key asks that we always get from customers is, who do I need to get involved in each of these different sessions, and what does that time commitment look like? Now, these are based on averages on the conversations we've had with customers today. So for example, if we look at the Copilot transformation assessment, we are typically talking to business decision makers, head of departments, IT, security teams, and we have sort of a time commitment of 4 to 6 hours. And that's usually because when we have the initial conversation and we talk towards those prompters, no single customer will be able to have the answers straight away. So there will be internal conversations that will be had. There'll be conversations with different sort of personas and departments as well. So that's why we've sort of averaged out some of these hours, because we are also accounting for some of the internal conversations that you will be having, not just conversations with Microsoft. In terms of role-based scenario discovery and business value definition, you'll see that we're looking at more of the sponsors, BDMs, and also the head of departments. And again, these can vary, especially the role-based scenario discovery sessions can vary customer to customer. So these are just giving you a little bit of an outline as to what to expect. But obviously, working with different customers, we can see what works best. If we move on to the next slide, we do have some key resources and links. Of course, this presentation is going to be available on demand, and these links I'll put them in the chat, but you'll also be able to have access to these through the presentation. If there's one thing that I would highly recommend, it's to click on the Microsoft Copilot scenario library that Michelle took you through. There are a few questions in the chat about it as well in terms of high value use cases industry-wise and department-wise. So you'll see that in the Copilot scenario library. But thank you for your time today. We hope this session has helped you understand how you can realize business value, to give you a bit of a framework as to realizing business value so you can start having those conversations today. But thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you on some of the next sessions that we'll be having in the customer skilling series.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely day.